Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah. I'm a tarot and oracle card reader, and I have a reading. So with this one, it was quite difficult for me to pick up on the message that was actually kind of wanting to come forward the most, because there was all of this other stuff coming in. So if you kind of think of a tarot reading as the cards are kind of giving you kind of energetic framework, right? They're saying the energy is this, and there will be loads of different storylines and different messages, loads of different ways that broader energetic framework will play out. And I feel like I got a lot of different threads or strands of those different, like showing me the different ways that the energy could play out without anything particularly stepping forward as the message that wanted to be delivered. So I'm kind of trusting, as is often the case, to be fair, that when I sort of start recording and chatting about the cards, that what needs to come will come. And that's the message, because I just think that there are a lot of different ways to kind of read these cards. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So whatever comes through is what's wanting to come through, what needs to come through, right? So probably saying all that for a reason. So there is a kind of thing here. Start off with the first couple of cards. There is something about low visibility. And the first card out in the spread was this Four of Coins, which was like a blizzard kind of energy, where it's kind of hard to see in it, right? Because it's low visibility in a blizzard. But the underlying card was this Eight of Swords. So that was sort of saying as well, like low visibility, not seeing. But it had this other message as well of piercing through. When I split the deck, the card on the split was the Sun. And the card behind that was the Tower. And this is definitely an energy of like a kind of breakthrough, right? So if I'm saying here, kind of not seeing, like low visibility, this would kind of seem to be the point of a breakthrough, or it's saying that that's definitely there. It's definitely there. Visibility, we can see a lot in the Sun, can't we? And then the Tower could just be representing the things that kind of block. And there's all this smoke and all this fog, so that's communicating low visibility as well, isn't it? This is a much bigger energy than this Four of Pentacles. But it's communicating that same thing, low visibility. But that was behind. It's like the sun breaks through, the light pierces through, it gets through. Really fucking visible. So I might come back to those in a minute. Right. So the low visibility. There's also this a bit of a sense of half of the spread may be communicating something that has already happened, or it's an established or familiar kind of, it's like the law of visibility thing is like a familiar energy. There's something familiar about it. So I'm saying it's maybe something that's happened, it's already been moved through, and it's maybe in the past. But if that's the case, there's some pertinence to it now. But it could be something that's been experienced, you know, on more than one occasion. It's maybe an energy of like it's been bumped up against or moved through on more than one occasion, which I'm literally leaning into that one a bit more, that it's just familiar, something familiar about it, moved through it several times before kind of thing. Yeah. So low visibility, but there is something else about astrology that I'm feeling to mention. I am not an astrologer. It's very, very fucking complex. I have a basic understanding of it. But there is something that wants to be mentioned here. So we have a card of Pluto, the major arcana card for Pluto, and the major arcana card for Capricorn. Now, in tropical astrology, Pluto is a very slow-moving planet, yeah? Very slow-moving planet. I think it spends about 20 years in each zodiac sign as it moves through the sky and does its thing. It's very slow-moving. It's what's known as a generational planet, yeah? It's like a whole generation of people will have Pluto in the same sign when they're born. It's a very slow-moving planet. And it had been in Capricorn in tropical astrology for a really long time. And it moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius in January. However, tropical astrology is Western. It's based on the Northern Hemisphere, and it's based on the seasons. It's based on the seasons, right? So there was this thing coming in, because I've just got the last two cards here. I am jumping about a bit. I'm going to go through them more properly in a moment. This is just like universal law, hardcore communicating like universal law. So there is something about tropical astrology is quite Western, used in the West, yeah, and it's based on the seasons. I started looking at my Vedic birth chart a few months ago. Now, Vedic astrology is Jyotish astrology, is ancient Indian astrology, and it is calculated in a different way. And the system that is used to calculate it is known as sidereal. Sidereal, written it down. Right, sidereal astrology is based on the position of constellations relative to the sun. And it accounts for the Earth's tilts and wobble, which shift the equinoxes by 5 seconds every year, the precession of the equinoxes, right? Because the Earth tilts and wobbles. So the dates of the sidereal zodiac change, whilst in tropical they do not. And in Vedic astrology, there are corrective systems called Ayanamsas, and they maintain the alignment between constellations and signs. So that's very much astrology. There's something about misalignment coming up here as well. But so what I've kind of understood there, why I'm being urged to mention it, and I'm talking here about universal law, is because it's like we all live under the same sky. So there's something about the sidereal, I think, being the universal system. Which, you know, I don't mean to sort of say that and be contentious, but there's something, it's like it's worth bearing in mind, because in sidereal astrology, that basically means that Pluto is still in Capricorn. Pluto is still in Capricorn in sidereal, in Vedic, right? So I've said that there. So this first card here, Four of Coins. So this isn't talking about money. This isn't talking about monetary value. The coins are symbolic of value. Of value. They can represent money, but here they don't. That's not what they're communicating. It's talking about something that is tangible, it shows up in the three-dimensional material realm. It's a tangible thing, and it's got this lower visibility, so it's there, but it's in this energy of lower visibility. And that was kind of coming through as meaning a couple of different things. So I think this is representative of something somebody has made, whatever that might be. They've made it. It's like a talent, a skill, an ability, a capability, something that can that has resulted in a kind of solid ass creation, but low visibility with it. Which was, I was saying, wasn't I right? It might be something from the past, but it might be something that kind of comes up again and again. This thing of low visibility, of like creating something, of putting something somewhere, and it's got this kind of desolation vibe to it. Like it doesn't get seen. Or it doesn't get seen much, right? Low visibility would suggest some visibility, but just not much. Right, but the other thing, it was talking about that phrase, that earning your stripes that have been earned, right? So it's, which talks about recognition, doesn't it? It talks about having reached a point of accomplishment, and there is a recognition for that, an acknowledgement of that. So it's like the stripes have been earned because the stripes are there, but there's this low visibility. So it was kind of coming through in part as like having a hard time seeing the value of the stripes that have been earned, like the particular stripes, what they represent specifically. It's like a gift or a talent, an ability, a skill. And kind of not like having a hard time seeing the value of it. The value is there. The quality is there. There's quality and there's value. I've actually written down here, it has a lot of value. A quality that's kept out of sight, it has a lot of value. Kept out of sight by the law of visibility. It doesn't feel like somebody wants to kind of deliberately hide something. It kind of feels like something is put out, it's established, it's created, it's formed, and it's put there, and then there's just this blizzard energy around it. But it has a lot of value. Has a lot of value to it. Stripes have been earned. There's skill. It's like a solid skill or talent there. Stripes have been earned with it. But then the makers of this deck call this card Forgotten Joy. But how that seems to be fitting here is if someone isn't seeing the value in what they're doing, in what they're making, in what they're producing, with this Seven of Swords coming next, it's like they could withdraw from doing it. They could just withdraw from doing it. They could just leave it, right? Stop doing it. Because that's hard, right? That is like hard. It's not about like validation either, I don't think. It's just this low visibility thing. So, but with this Seven of Swords as well, so it's like, yes, it was representing that idea of like they could withdraw from doing it. They could kind of take that particular skill or that particular asset, that particular kind of talent. They could take it off the table. They could kind of keep it out of sight. It was saying that, right? But this Seven of Swords can be an energy of kind of secrecy and strategy, and it can be a bit of a sort of subterfuge energy as well. You know, not always the best intent. But what it was kind of saying, because there was this idea of like compounded here, right? Something being compounded is like if somebody isn't, or they're having a hard time seeing the value of something that they've created or something that they're doing, something that they've done, they're having a hard time seeing the value of that. They're having a hard time acknowledging their own achievement. The idea of earning stripes, right? Having a hard time acknowledging their own achievement. That could be compounded by that lack of value, not seeing the value in it, could be compounded by others not recognising it either. But actually what kind of came through more, because this, like I was saying with like the subterfuge, and it's a bit sneak, it can be like kind of jealousy envy, which I'm saying because that kind of comes up later as well. It's like there's this idea of it not being that people don't see the value in what they're doing, but there is this kind of jealousy or this kind of envy vibe in it that means there's a bit of strategy in that they don't acknowledge, but it's kind of strategic, because actually what's going on is they're jealous. There's a bit of jealousy at play there. So it's like it maybe doesn't get, maybe it doesn't, it's just generally got a vibe of low visibility. It maybe isn't something that's kind of widely recognised. But what I'm trying to say is that there's some recognition here, but it's got this kind of strategy and sneaky energy in it that's coming through as like jealousy. So the reason that it's perhaps not acknowledged, the value of it isn't acknowledged by some others, is because they're jealous of it. So that's why it's like there's this strategy things kind of wanting to come through. I mean, I suppose in that respect, I mean, it could be strategy to sort of discourage someone from doing something. Like ignore, don't acknowledge it, and they'll get discouraged from doing whatever it is this represents. But it's a strategy that's kind of rooted in like jealousy or envy. Maybe fear as well. There might be some fear there. The next card that came out was Judgment. So this is the card, one of the cards of Pluto. It's also like elemental fire. It's big ass fire is this card. It's a massive energy. It's really big energy. And it's about, you know, the last day of Judgment. It's kind of about rebirth, death, rebirth, like Pluto, the planet, right? Death, rebirth. Our power and like relationship to other people's. So this could be like power plays, right? Strategic kind of power plays of not acknowledging that you recognize the value of something that somebody is doing or what they've created. It's like a strategic power play. It was coming through with, I kind of kept getting the phrase false start as well. It doesn't necessarily feel quite right to say that though. It's sort of in there, the idea of a false start. I mean, really what I would kind of want to put full start with would be if anybody's kind of been trying to strategically sort of maneuver around someone or something that they're doing to get them to stop doing it, and this kind of bad intent, I would hope that that's the thing that's had the false start. Or I'm wanting to kind of say that that's perhaps the thing that's had the false start. Didn't quite get off the ground. Because I was really kind of looking, this figure at the forefront hasn't broken through here. it's that idea of like, it looks like crowning, right? In sort of physical labor when the baby starts to crown. It's not talking about physical labor, but it's, you know, it's that idea of something birthing, but it's not quite broken free, not quite kind of, it's not been birthed, but there's this, it's trying to get through its crowning. And I've put a choice that resulted in disappointment, because the next card is this Five of Cups, but we're not quite there yet. So a choice that resulted in disappointment, right? Which could, I mean, I don't really want to stick with the idea that somebody has kind of been strategically trying to kind of shaft someone, which I think is some of what's being communicated here. But it hasn't got off the ground. If that is what's going on, it hasn't stopped this from being created, I don't think. But it is making the point that the low visibility and the kind of struggling to see the value in it themselves, there is a risk that they would withdraw from doing it, that they would stop doing it. Which, if there's value to it, I would say that it's important that they don't stop doing it. That's why it's coming up in a tarot reading. So this, I think this is kind of talking about this idea of why this might be something, an energy that's kind of been moved through more than once in the past. It's like a kind of, almost like a disappointing rebirth. It's like going through it, and then, because there's something a bit sort of brighter, louder, more visible about this card. It's kind of, okay, it went like this that time, so we'll have like a rebirth, have a new start with it, But then on the other side of that, there's this kind of disappointment. It's a bit of a disappointing kind of rebirth energy, I think. But it's this idea of piercing through again. It's like something trying to get through, and it's elemental fire, and the sun is fire, right? The sun. It's like the breakthrough does happen, the breaking through does happen. But there's, because this is such an energy of like rebirth and kind of born again and rising up, it's like it would suggest that the breaking through happens here, but I don't think it has. I don't think it did. It's like it didn't quite get there. Yeah, and it's right, because the figure isn't really that visible. You can kind of make out, like barely kind of make out, you know, you can see that there's a form there, but it's that idea of low visibility again. So it's like it is this one. It's like this kind of low visibility. Trying to see their value, like trying to see the value, because there's gold trumpet, gold coins, there's a connection there. It's like the creations of them, you know, it's something that they make. It's the birth kind of metaphor. It's like it's something that they make, and they are intrinsic to the value of it. They are so intrinsically part of the value of the whole. But it's like, it's something about, it's like the value isn't visible yet, or it's starting to show itself at this point. If it's low visibility here, it's like it's a bit more visible here, but it's still not quite come through. But there's this thing, it's like it's at the forefront. There's a bit of distance like out the back, isn't there, suggested with this card? Whereas like this is where it's kind of coming out to the forefront more. So it could be like somebody who's, if we use that perspective idea of kind of something back here, it's like maybe someone taking steps to present something or to put something out there, to put themselves out there, to do something. They're taking steps. They're taking themselves towards that. They're becoming more visible. It's the attempt to pierce through, right? It's the trying to do it. But then this Eight of Cups came out with the Judgment card. So I think actually the initial thing I kind of got with this was what I've kind of just been saying. Because there's this idea of vagueness in this card as well, yeah? So low visibility again. Where the cups, they're just vaguer, they're harder to make out. But the figure is much more defined here. And it was this idea of kind of moving through, like moving through a metaphorical birthing canal, right? Kind of it taking form, it starts to take form or be seen in a more defined way through this process. So even if there isn't, it's a bit of a card of like going into the unknown. So it's not known whether or not the breakthrough will happen or when the breakthrough will happen, but there's movement towards it anyway. And with that movement, with that moving closer, with the continuing to take the steps, that came up in a previous reading as well, like taking steps, keeping going, just keeping going, doing it. And it's each time it will kind of, it will push through a bit more. It's like to keep taking the steps, bringing something into form. Put drawing it out as well, like drawing something out of the unknown. Giving form to the intangible was another thing, because I've been discussing there about it. The form being more definitive here. It's like this is a point. Creation, right? The Day of Judgment, creation. Giving form to the intangible, creation. It's like a big elemental fire, like a big creative energy. Like a furnace of creative fire. Furnace of creative fire. Got an itchy arm. And it's that idea of like closing distance again, of like taking steps, bringing something that's been out back and bringing it to the forefront more. It's like kind of going to get it to bring it back. Bring it back, make it visible. But then this Five of Cups, right? This Five of Cups. So I got with this, I got misalignment being corrected. Misalignment being corrected. Which could, right, so like I've just said, it could just be talking about when something is kind of back there and needs to be brought to the forefront, it could sort of see that as like bringing something into alignment. There's also the energy of Mars in Scorpio, which I only really mention because in like traditional tarot decks, the Five of Cups is assigned to Mars in Scorpio, planet Mars in the sign of Scorpio. This deck doesn't necessarily have those, it doesn't use those particular associations. The reason that I'm mentioning it here is because Scorpio is ruled by Mars in traditional astrology, right? It's always been the ruler of Scorpio. And a planet in a sign of its rulership is where it's at its very fucking powerful. So that is kind of why I'm mentioning the Mars in Scorpio here. It's like all this power with Pluto, which is also associated with Scorpio. It's like the other more modern ruler of Scorpio. But this was like powerful. So it's reiterating how powerful that judgment energy is. But then, so this is often like a card of kind of disappointment. Significant but only partial loss, I've written here. Also can talk about flaws and imperfections. And then I got a flaw in the plan. I think there's a couple of things going on here, right? There's any kind of anyone else sneaking in a kind of shitty, the way of ill intent in a sort of sneaky, secretive way. There was a flaw in that plan. I think that hasn't gone further. I think it's failed. It's failed. So it's kind of talking about there's disappointment. They've tried to kind of sabotage something or something for somebody. It's failed. They've not had the desired rebirth with that. So that is there. But for the ones who aren't sabotaging, the ones who are perhaps finding it hard to see the value, this energy, this individual, this group, it's talking about there has been like a significant loss. It's like it's because this judgment energy could have signified like a particular situation or a particular environment, project, job, people, person, you know. So it was like this very kind of big energy, but it's followed by this disappointment. So it's like it didn't work out, whatever it was, or it didn't go or break through or come into being in the way that it was maybe hoped that it would. And so that was significant. The fact that it didn't does have significance to it, because something was lost in the process, right? Something was lost. But it was only a partial loss. It's kind of saying like it was only partial. So it might just be like something didn't work out fully in the way that it was hoped for. It doesn't mean the thing is completely fucked, right? It just... But then, right, so this was interesting. I'm not sure I really kind of understood. There's this kind of... pattern in the cloak of the figure here, and it started communicating about blueprints. And it's that idea again of like the blueprint not having definition enough for it to be accurately perceived, which is that idea of low visibility again, isn't it? So it could be like this energy has come through this death, rebirth, Plutonian energy, right? But it's like there's still something about it, that low visibility, that idea of not being perceived is still there. And a blueprint is a design plan or a technical drawing, right? A plan. I was talking about over here. What else did I get about the blueprint? See what I was saying. Right, I put, yeah, right. The blueprint is in the wrong area. It needs its opposite. It needs to be upturned, flipped. Yeah, something with a lot of power, not being in the correct position to be perceived in the way that it needs to be. So there could be some disappointment or melancholy about this. Which is what I've been saying, right, about the idea of moving something from the back and bringing it to the forefront, like positioning it so it can kind of break through. And I suppose it's the idea of it's at the forefront, you can see it on the figure, but it sort of has this low visibility because it just kind of blends. So it's like it doesn't have the right backdrop. It's not in the right position, is what I wrote, right? Not in the right position. Not in the correct position. Because blueprints, they're plans, technical drawings that are very accurate, aren't they? They're very detailed and they're very accurate. So things can be made. So they have to have this really, really high level of accuracy. So there's something about that, like the actual correct position. The correct position of something. And it's got so much power. But misalignment being corrected. Misalignment being corrected. This is kind of the misalignment. It's like you would be able to see this if it was up here. Do you get what I mean? Because there'd be the contrast. It needs its opposite. It's interesting. So the card that came out underneath this was this Four of Cups. So the thing with this, right, it was that idea of the blueprint again, the blueprint. Because these boxes started kind of glowing when I sat in meditation. They sort of started like lighting up a little bit. They would kind of, like a light was coming on inside them. So it was this idea of connection, power through, the potential, so power through, and then the potential to power up and illuminate. Because this is just the energy of somebody who's kind of, mean, it could just be somebody who's fed up, you know, of trying to kind of birth something, trying to bring something into the forefront, trying to kind of have this, and it can't be positioned correctly at the moment, or it's not been, it's like attempts to move it around and position it correctly haven't borne fruit or something. So it's just got that energy of, oh, right? But it's like, this is the kind of energy where like decisions to kind of not continue doing something, you know, it's that kind of energy, isn't it? You just kind of get a bit depleted, like you lose your zhuzh. It's like losing kind of vitality to do something. You're kind of a bit stuck in that. So it's like in this kind of headspace or emotional space, the decision could be made to kind of withdraw from something. But that's then where these cubes start glowing. So it's like making a connection. Making a connection. But it's that idea of piercing through, isn't it? It's this something kind of piercing through, a connection being made. The power of something having the potential to power up further and to illuminate. Is it like something trying to get through in this state? Because this idea of power and the Mars in Scorpio, it's like it's just such a powerful energy because it's in the sign of its rulership. There's something about that it's like the power of that is what will bring the illumination, even though there's this really kind of quite despondent, I just keep wanting to say the word despondent energy, like a despondency. So there'll still be something that kind of gets through, that has the potential to illuminate. And from the book, I mean, it could just be talking about like self-reflection as well, right? Being in a state of just sort of having to think, having to consider, reflecting about things before moving forward. The other thing I've written down is possibility is closer than you think as well. Which is kind of what this idea of the despondency in the one cup here, it's like focusing on or being so in the spill, you know, like what hasn't worked out, that there's something here that's not being given attention, which might be what I'm saying about all these boxes lighting up in my meditation. It's like ping, ping, ping. And it leads to this cup, what this cup represents, this other thing that's right there. So the next, right, so it's like they feel like something that's already happened, that's maybe already been moved through numerous times. It might be something that's happening now. Don't know. Discernment. These cards feel, well, I'm just going to start talking about them. So we've got this Devil card. Oh, this is like a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff coming through. It's those different threads again. It's those different threads. I'm just going to pause a sec. Okay, right. Back. Okay, so the Devil. Oh. Okay. The devil came out with this Queen of Wands underneath. I think the thing that's actually wanting to come forward is this Queen of Wands. I think this Queen of Wands is this, she's this not very visible one, which is funny, right? Because she's actually very visible, like the visuals communicate. She's very much able to be seen. And this, so the cardinal fire. Oh, okay, yeah, right. So fire element, this is cardinal fire. This that I was saying about the crowning, but it doesn't quite push through. What do queens wear? They wear crowns. It's like crowned. So cardinal fire, she's Aries, right? She's very active, very inspiring, action oriented, self-motivating, sort of leader energy, you know, in whatever kind of context. It's a very creative energy. Fire generally very, very creative. Did I say furnace with this? Like a big furnace blast of creation, yeah, rebirth, creative energy. She's got that. She's right there. She's of that element. She utilizes it. She's very developed with using that, yeah. Lots of vitality and open heart. So it doesn't, it's like the cards are saying, it doesn't really make sense in a way that she's not visible. It could be a man or woman, right? Queen is because there's water. She's fire and water. I think the queens are coming through because there's this emphasis on heart, which just generally very much in the world at the moment. But I think there's this emphasis on somebody, man or woman, or however folks identify, but somebody who uses their heart, like what they're doing involves their heart, okay? It's heart-led. Fiery with it, but it's heart-led, yeah. So I need to go back to this devil jumping about. So this devil, it is the sign of Capricorn in the major arcana. So it does kind of indicate like qualities like earnestness and sort of being practical, being determined, like commanding, steadfast, supportive, high achieving. All of those things are attributes of the archetype of Capricorn. But in the shadow, it can be sort of like over serious, restrictive and controlling. And it's also very much an energy of greed, envy, jealousy. But a big thing that was coming through with it was fear. And the thing is, this queen came out underneath. I don't think the fear belongs to her. Because how this was actually coming through, it was looking a bit like the Hierophant to me, which Hierophant typically kind of represents societal structures, you know, like schools, institutions, churches, and all the kind of beliefs, dogma in sort of negative aspect that you can get from that. But it's not, it's the devil, but the figures, the Hierophant's often depicted as being like a kind of priest figure with two figures, with two people at his feet, yeah. Which he isn't in this deck either. It's completely different depiction in this deck. So there's something here very much about like societal kind of societal fears, societal beliefs. But so what I've actually got with it, it's like how the mediocre oppress the gifted. How the mediocre oppress the gifted. Which was actually, so I'm going to go right on and say that the gifted one is this one. The gifted one, like I was saying here, about something valuable, stripes that have been earned, a talent, a skill, something that is tangible, and it's got this low visibility. Possibly some element of people trying to sabotage as well, right? Which would be this kind of, if that's there, it would kind of be coming from this kind of energy, right? The jealous, like sabotaging somebody or stealing from them, or, you know, all of that would kind of be the shadow of this energy. I got like mediocre oppress the gifted, which was actually the title of a video I watched probably about 2 years ago, and I've gone back to it this morning and I can't tell you who the recording is of, who's speaking, because there's no credit in the video, and I've now forgotten what the channel name was, but I will link the video because it's just very interesting to watch. But he was talking about the mediocre oppressing the gifted, and one of the things that he said, that because he is talking about much more globally, specifically like the West actually, but the thing that's relevant here is the idea of like people having sort of natural talents, creativity, which are their natural resources, right? That came up in my last reading as well, the idea of your natural assets and resources, like what people can do, what they can create, what they do, right? Who they are. And this, in negative aspect, can be this sign of restriction and oppression. So it's like having talents, creativity, natural resources, being oppressed, or having those particular traits oppressed, because there's some kind of jealousy around them, or there's some kind of fear around them, but it doesn't belong to the person who holds the actual gifts and the talents. It's this societal thing, and it's this unhealthy thing. Yeah, so I've written down which is a quote from the video, the mentality of exploitation of other people's resources and the dehumanization and subjugation of those whose resources they are. Which is obviously, and that's a much bigger thing, but again, in the context that it's coming through here, it's like some societal kind of structures, things in place, things that have been built, that actually exploit. So they exploit this, but they suppress it, they lower it. Kept getting the word lower. They lower, it's like they want to push it down, they want to lower it, lower them down in some way. Keep them less visible, they want to keep them down. And then a quote from Albert Einstein, great spirits have always encountered oppression from mediocre minds. So this, as big an energy as it might be in its ways, which, well, it is if we're talking about society, but it's the mediocre one. It's like, it could just be saying like, fucking mediocrity. Fucking mediocrity. Because there's somebody really vibrant, really vivacious, really creative, openly doing their thing, but there's this lack of visibility attached to it. This is Capricorn energy as well in those traditional associations. So it is kind of, it's like societal structures, things. It's like mediocre things kind of oppressing somebody's light, that they are shining, right? They are shining. Because I was kind of seeing it as like they're coming out of this. So it's like they're coming out, they're coming onto the stage. Because if this is society, we could definitely sort of liken that to a stage, couldn't we? They're coming out in their society and they're doing their thing. They are doing that. Here's a pop in. I also often with this card just get like the idea of a heavy ass veil. That's why I'm saying I was seeing a kind of, it's like these heavy ass curtains being drawn, and then she comes down from backstage onto the stage. So that idea again of bringing something from the back to the forefront. But it's, so this was where it kind of, it didn't quite come through. This is where it gets birthed. This is, yeah, the crown. This is where it gets birthed. This is where it gets birthed. It gets birthed in or through the unhealthy aspects of a structure. And there's like guilt, shame, fear, jealousy in it with this. Put limited by shoulds and doctrines as well with this. Which is that restrictive, controlling aspect of Capricorn, right? The shadow, the sort of shadow aspects of it. Quite a limiting energy. And that is here. But it's here with this one. But not because it's hers. It's really emphasizing like she is not the limiting one. It's like she's the limited. It's like this one, man or woman, heart, right, would be the one that would be limited by those shoulds. Should do this, should do that, should be this, should be that. And those doctrines. This is like the one that would be harmed by that. It's a harmful energy for them, or it's trying to harm them. That's the point of it. It's trying to cause them harm. But if she's busting out free and away from it, man, or she's doing a thing within it anyway, it would suggest with the old universal law as well at the end that it's not succeeding in harming. It's not succeeding in harming. And this is like, this is the breakthrough. This is that breakthrough. It's that idea of like piercing through again. Piercing through darkness. Yeah, so I've put this is the one that could be or is limited by the shoulds and doctrines. There's this idea of dark feminine as well, in the sense of like Lilith, the archetype of Lilith, the first wife of Adam who got expelled from the Garden of Eden because she demanded to be Adam's equal, right? Lilith is changing signs soon as well, I think, in the sky. Black Moon Lilith is like a mathematical point in the sky. She's not actually like a a celestial object. She's a point. But this one, right, so guided by instinct, graceful, enthusiastic. I've underlined genuine because I think there's a lot of like, or it's really been sort of shown that there is this kind of energy of like envy, ill intent, sneaky shit, or just like wider structures. If it's not society, it could be just a structure. It could be a familial structure. It could be a friendship group. It could be a place of work, any sort of institution. It could be, right? It doesn't have to be as wide as society, but it's saying that there is something in there that I think has sort of been trying to work against her. It's sort of that idea of like a heavy ass veil. It's been trying to keep her down, keep her covered, but she's bust through. Because the truth, right? Because she's genuine. Universal law, truth. But the other thing about the fear with these next two cards, there's something about like, I initially thought like, oh, so are people scared of her? Like, is that what the fear thing? Is that part of the fear thing, is that people are scared of her? Because she's not scary. She's not scary, do you know what I mean? Like the imagery on the card isn't like, and this devil energy isn't belonging to her, in that I think she has to move around in it. She has to negotiate it, as we all do if it's society, you know, we all do, don't we? It doesn't actually kind of belong to her. It's not like her personal devil, do you know what I mean? It's like a bigger thing. But actually this is this really exuberant, vivacious, likely some degree of confidence, like high level of confidence, sort of mature, developed, creative, kind of genuine, open-hearted, quite active, self-motivated person, right? Doing their thing. And I think the idea of a fear is that some people find it intimidating. It's like I think some people maybe find her intimidating, which could be what this is about, like kind of not acknowledging their value or the value of something that they're doing. It could be because they're intimidated by it. Because intimidated, right, in the sense of like overawed, that is there, because this guy's coming next. Just the expression on his face is a bit like, get overawed from that. He's sort of looking in the other direction. But this idea of, you know, just we're intimidated, like people don't know what to do around her, don't know what to do around them. They're silent and they're sort of inhibited. But she's so open. So how that can, which, right, this idea of like someone might, if they're not seeing the value in what they're doing, or they're struggling to see that, it could make them withdraw. It could make them stop doing what they're doing. It could make them doubt themselves, right? Yeah, so there's something about self-doubt there. Because although typically you would associate a figure like this with confidence, there's something like I'm not feeling to say, and they're really confident. I feel like maybe confidence is something that has been affected a bit here. especially if they're aware that there's been some sneak, they've kind of caught on to that, which, very perceptive, right? Probably will arrive at a point where they do understand that. So these next two cards is this Knight of Cups and this Nine of Swords, and they were basically just sort of saying like this is like somebody feeling intimidated by them, but that's the point. Feeling, cups, water, feeling intimidated. It's not that this one is going out deliberately intimidating people and using fear as a kind of thing. That's not what's going on. Whatever they're doing, their presence, their way of being, their work, their creativity, whatever, there could be something here about like sexual attraction as well, like might be a bit of a hottie, might be something very just generally very attractive about them, but people find it intimidating, so it's like turning the other way. It's almost like they can't look. This was, and then this card is just like fear. It's like feeling the fear. Just feeling the fear. It's being timid, but also just really feeling intimidated. I mean, it's a strong card, is this? I don't know if it's quite that intense. It might be. But if it is, I'd say there's other stuff going on there. So that's a deeper thing. That's maybe like a deeper fear that has been sort of activated or touched upon meeting this one, maybe. These are both court cards, so this might be talking about two people you've met. And it's activated some fear. Feeling the fear. And then I've written ideals colliding with reality, ? But this is also this thing about impending opportunity, which I think I mentioned back here. A possibility is closer than you think with this card. And then this idea of an impending opportunity. And there's something that's quite impending about this energy, isn't it? It's like kind of creeping up. Being overwhelmed. It could be kind of coming across someone or something that they're doing, meeting somebody, feeling intimidated. There's just this timidity. They don't say anything. They kind of figuratively, maybe literally kind of turn the other way. There's maybe like an impending opportunity to do something, to go somewhere, to take some action, and it's like it's big in the mind, man. Much thinking about it here, but in a way that's like worrying, like overthinking, like there's a real like a sense of overwhelm here. But then it's interesting because this Knight of Cups is looking at this fountain card here. He is depicted, he's sat in a fountain, right? Sat in a fountain. And this has got a bit of a collision energy to it as well, that idea of ideals colliding with reality. So if I was going to read this in a kind of positive sort of way, right, I would say that maybe there's been a meeting of two energies. This one has got all this kind of societal restraint and this societal kind of fear and jealousy and weird kind of structures, everything I've discussed, right? Guilt, shame. Because like I was saying, they operate from their heart, right, as well, which could be seen in societies as being quite a feminine thing to do. So there's that kind of, all the dogma of that bullshit. But it's like two people have met And the reason why this is a knight and why this is a queen, it's because I think this is an aspect of somebody. I think this is, or it's just saying there is a tendency when people meet this one that they are intimidated by them. So it doesn't matter whether this queen meets another queen or this queen meets a king or this queen, what it's like the person that they're meeting is kind of put into this state of they're intimidated, so they're not at their kind of fullest expression. Does that make sense? And there's maybe all of this to contend with as well. I mean, that could be saying like anxiety, just like some kind of aspect of anxiety there. But just, yeah. So this is like the state of being intimidated, feeling the fear, feeling intimidated. But they're looking at this fountain. And this is like symbolic of like divine nature. It exists outside and beyond the cycles of birth, death, time and form. This is like this higher fucking thing, is this? So there is a chance, because this is quite an intuitive energy. It's quite like feels, right? There is a chance with the ideals colliding with reality, there is a chance that that is actually exactly what is supposed to be happening. That's the universal law. It's like it's an ideal, yeah, it's an ideal. Perhaps they're an ideal. Perhaps they're an ideal. Represent an ideal. But it's like feeling intimidated by that. Turning and looking the other way, but then it's like this divine nature's there. It's like it's divine. It's not idealized, it's divine. Recognize its divinity. Maybe that's why it's so intimidating, or it's felt in this really kind of big way, because it is actually this big divine thing. It's got a lot of divinity in it. It's colliding with the universal law. Reality, the truth, the actual truth. The actual truth of reality is like the universal law, right? So it's like this one, although might be intimidated and feeling some kind of fear, when they actually look, what they're seeing is this divine, they're seeing this truth. They're seeing this truth of this really big divine nature. But the other thing with this card in the book, it just says the end of seeking. That came up in my previous reading as well. It's like the soul had been seeking something and they'd found it, and then it's here again. It's like the end of seeking. It's almost like they meet and then he's like, oh, looks the other way, and then it's like a confirmation of like, yeah, end of seeking, end of seeking. There's something significant there. It talks about a moment of cosmic clarity as well. So it's like if you look at it, look into it, it'll be really clear. Ooh. Right, so this, just have to show them, I've nearly finished. It's just such a big energy of like universal law, like this idea of the eye of truth. But this is where it was like being seen, because there's an eye here, this idea of being seen, being visible. So whether it's seen, whether it's like literally seen as in understood, whether it's more visible than it was, it's been brought to the forefront because that is the just thing to happen, right? The just thing to happen. It talks about like the creation and restoration of balance as well. So what I was saying here about the misalignment being corrected, by the time we're over here, it's like that's what's happening, the creation and restoration of balance. Things are in alignment again. Things are in alignment because they've been brought out to the front. They've been birthed. They've been birthed through this dark energy, because universal law. The darkness can be there, but the darkness, the light, right? The light pierces through the darkness. Oh, that's just quite funny. When I sat with the card and meditated, I got the visual, the arms just kept extending and got really long and long and long. So I got the long arm of the law. Right, but divine law. So like the far-reaching power of divine authority. The far-reaching power of divine authority goes far beyond anything that human society has constructed for itself and any beliefs that are within that, right? Divine law is the thing that exists outside of all of those structures, outside of all of time, space, death and rebirth. That's the thing. It's the thing I think that this one is seeing, or this state of intimidation, this Queen of Wands, has had them kind of look at something or consider something differently or look at something more closely, and then it's just like bam. Yeah. So it's like it gets seen. The breakthrough happens. And then I've written, stay in your heart, no delusions, because that's always, stay in your heart, no delusions. Stay in your heart, no delusions. That clarity. We could look at this one as being in his heart as well, because he's a feeler, he's the Knight of Cups, but he's depicted as being in this fountain. So it's kind of saying, yeah, if water is your heart, water's symbolic of your emotions, your heart, he's in that. He's in that. Okay. All right. Nice one. I hope that that's been helpful. It's really long again. I can't be averaging like 90-minute readings. The feck. Anyway. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.